The big debate that will rage on forever is whether the death of kayfabe ruined wrestling. Like everything, there's pros and cons, and it's best to see it as an evolution of the industry. You gotta change with the times. Wrestlers themselves definitely have picked up on that though, so I am Simon from What Culture. Remember to tell your loved ones that you do love them and subscribe. And this is 10 wrestlers who broke kayfabe in unusual ways. Number 10, Riddle forgets his lines. Only Matthew Riddle could get away with this. It also likely helped him as ever since he seems less scripted. But days before a WrestleMania clash with Sheamus over the US title, Riddle was hanging out on Raw talking to Asuka. He wanted to see if she was into scooters because of course he did, and then he forgot his lines. Rather than try and cover this though, Riddle just told us he couldn't remember and he glided off into the distance. Asuka looked like she was going to burst. This was excellent. It became the conversation of the day whether this was Riddle being Riddle or a mistake, but that's why it's so good. Who even cares? Seeing someone actually act like a human being made him very relatable, and it was funny. I mean, we've all done things like this. There's been rumors of other guys getting fired for less, and we'll get to that in around about 8 seconds, but the word was Vince McMahon thought this was hilarious, as he should have, because it was. Number 9, Paul London is happy. And tying into what we just said, say hello to Paul London. This has been talked about a lot because it's just so weird, but after Vince McMahon decided his next story was going to feature him being blown up in a limo, everybody had to be on board. This meant as the boss was walking to his death car, the whole locker room had to look on as if this was the most pivotal moment in the history of anything. Did anyone tell these guys what actually was going on though? Nope, just stand there, kind of look a bit upset, and then stare at Vince. It was still strange that London decided to take this information and grin from ear to ear like he was the happiest man ever, but still, it's not like this was even a thing until it came out into the wider world that McMahon was livid and that it had ruined the moment. Trust me, it hadn't. It cost Paul as he was punished afterwards and eventually fired, I suppose, because the powers that be saw this as a breaking of kayfabe, but still, talk about an overreaction. Number 8, Mark Henry runs past the NEXUS. I love this story, hence why we have spoken about it before. I think everybody just forgot this day that Mark Henry is basically a super athlete. But after the NEXUS had gone wild, as was their way back in the day, the WWE roster decided to run them off. They'd had enough of their shenanigans and didn't want them around anymore, so chased them out of the arena. The problem was this was being filmed for TV, so you couldn't run as fast as you wanted, something that clearly wasn't part of Henry's nature. So when he was part of the chasing pack, Mark caught up with Heath Slater, who in a desperate attempt to make this somewhat credible, took a swipe at Henry's shoulder. It looked ridiculous because the world's strongest man was not a fly, and Mark even had to slow down so the NEXUS could get away. Now when you first see this, you probably won't realize, but watch it twice, and it is brilliant. WWE production snafus happening live on TV. Number 7, Bobby Heenan is terrified of Brian Pillman. Back in the 90s, kayfabe was alive and well. Most people knew the deal, but promotions weren't playing ball, and it's why a lot of wrestlers would choke out interviewers if they dared use the word fake. Somebody that took full advantage of this was Brian Pillman, who decided he was gonna work everyone. Fans, his co-workers, his bosses, he didn't care. If he thought there was even the slightest chance you'd be confused, Pillman was gonna push that button. This included the commentators, and man, Bobby Heenan knew this more than most. Happening during WCW's Clash of the Champions 32 when Bryan was facing Eddie Guerrero, the loose cannon decided to go into full wrestler mode when he jumped out the ring and started to mess with the brain. This wasn't part of the script though, so Bobby, who had legit neck issues, freaked out, told Pillman to back off before dropping the F-bomb on live TV because he was so worried about what Pillman may or may not do. As you can imagine, this wasn't planned and nobody was particularly happy that a curse word had gone out in public, but hey, it worked. It made Bryan feel like he was absolutely unhinged, which was exactly the point. Number 6, Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik get pulled over. We are going back even further here and do not get it confused. In 1987, keeping the pretense up was part of the job description. If you were a good guy, you didn't even look at a bad guy in the wrong way. Wrestling was not sports entertainment, and don't you dare act like it is. Behind the scenes, wrestlers were still friends though, obviously, and given how much travel there was, buddies wanted to travel with their other buddies. It was a risk, as if you got caught there would be real problems, as Hacksaw Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik found out firsthand. Because not only were they in the same car, this was discovered when the pair got pulled over by the police. It then got worse when they were found to have marijuana on their person, and because this was going to make the news, both were let go. Yep. Do not mess with the laws of wrestling. Hacksaw was able to return in a few months when the heat died down, but it wasn't the same for Sheiky baby. He was gone for over 4 years, and I bet he regretted ever getting in that vehicle. Number 5, Koji KITAO messes with Earthquake. By all accounts, the real-life John Tenta was a very nice man. Still though, look at him. He is huge and probably not somebody you want to mess with. Koji KITAO disagreed. Happening in 1991 and during a working relationship between the WWF and Japan's Super World of Sports, these two squared off in the ring when KITAO decided he would just start fighting Earthquake for real. I'm not kidding. It was quite quickly obvious what was happening as referees tried to calm this down, but it got even worse when Koji got on the microphone and told everybody that wrestling was fake and we were all idiots for watching it. Alright then. He was soon fired after this because of course he was. I mean, there's actually few things worse you can do in the ring. Number 4, Cody Rhodes shoots the ship. I love Cody Rhodes. I think he is an inspiration given what he did in 2016, and his constantly evolving character gets more fascinating each and every week. This took a new turn in January 2022 though, when the American Nightmare came to the ring, grabbed a microphone, and just spoke like we all would after reading the latest round of wrestling news. So he went off about the importance of CM Punk, NXT, WWE, Brody King, The Elite being a heel. It was inside baseball at its finest, and for a nerd like me, it rocked. It was also the best example of blending the real with story, and look, it was fun. That magic word in wrestling that is forgotten about constantly. Half the time, if you achieve that, you don't have to worry about anything else. Number 3, Bayley, Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, and Nikki stop wrestling. I mean, what the hell were they meant to do? As a man who has been through wrestling training, I can tell you firsthand, nobody teaches you what to do during a global pandemic. Wasn't really on the agenda. It did happen, however, as we switched to no-fan shows, which was horrible, although fair play to WWE. The first ever SmackDown in front of nobody was oddly fun, as Triple H just ran wild for 2 hours. It was also up to Bayley, Sasha Banks, Alexa Bliss, and Nikki Cross to be the chosen ones to try some wrestling in this environment, and with no real experience to the contrary, as soon as the commercial break hit, they stopped fighting. I mean, this does make sense. Why would you hit each other when quite literally nobody is watching? The one answer was, in case the footage leaks online, which is exactly what happened. A rule was soon brought in that we continue regardless, and can you imagine if you saw this and didn't know about the inner workings of the business? You would have been baffled. Number 2, Becky Lynch works TMZ. If you've ever seen a wrestler interviewed by TMZ, you know the deal. They mostly ask about wrestling not being real and go from there, and it's easy to handle with the stock answer of the hazards are real. When Becky Lynch sat down with these guys though, she decided to go whole hog, because why the flub not? For you see, when the chat moved to what happens if somebody does get hurt, big time Bex just told him. The referee will throw up an X sign with their hands. This tells the people in the back we need medical help instantly, and it becomes all hands on deck. And this isn't the first time everybody has talked about this, but given the TMZ audience, it's very likely it went to far more people than it does usually. Once more though, if you weren't aware, this was the fourth wall breaking down. Number 1, Becky Lynch in Billions. Now this was cool. After smashing the wrestling world, Becky Lynch was asked onto TV show Billions, where she engaged in a fight on the program. As this was all part of a ruse though, as soon as Becky was done, she launched into a big speech where she talked about Kayfabe, and that the whole point of wrestling is to put somebody else over to make them look good. She then continued that she can't stand some of her co-workers, but that's the gig, and even described what a pinfall actually means. I mean, there's no going back now. That's not to say she did anything groundbreaking, because way back in 1989, Vince McMahon went in front of a court and explained all of this, but still, you still get some people in the deep dark depths of the internet going, oh, I can't believe this happened, and here we have a genuine superstar who doesn't seem to give a flub. And that's because she gets it. Know of any other wrestlers who broke kayfabe in unusual ways? Make sure you let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Then head over to whatculture.com, where you can read articles like this with your eyes, and your eyes need it. Make sure you watch another video because your heart needs that too, and we have social media. Give us a follow so that 2022 doesn't die. My name is Simon from What Culture. Thank you for joining me as always, and know this entire time I've been sat here naked. Now you're questioning whether I'm telling you the truth, but I'm not. Or am I? No.